believe, is Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith, partner with Bryant Songi, Sanji or Songji? How do you pronounce that?
It's Bryant Songi Snell Global
Sanji.
Partners.
If you added a couple of more, then that's the whole interview right there.
There you go.
How are you doing? Haven't talked to you in a long time.
I am doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Director of the Center for Education Opportunity at the American First Policy Institute. And, boy, we have a lot. Did you hear some of the Shad White video that he put out?
I have not had a chance. I saw something last night, and I did not. I haven't listened to that whole interview.
The CRT thing has just gone crazy. What you heard when we, and I know we want to talk about a lot of different things here, but that audio that you heard, I have a keyboard in front of me. If I barely touch it, it goes off here. So that's the reason for that. But this is a young teacher. She's got a political career ahead of her, but she's a young teacher, and she's had enough of this. And they're giving her 60 seconds only to speak at a school board. She's a teacher. And they're making it as difficult as possible. But, I mean, this is worth listening to, what is going on in some of the school board meetings across this country.
Exemption for
I do.
Okay. You've been cleared by staff. Can someone?
Yes, I have. Can I have my full minute, please?
You may.
Thank you.
I'm waiting for staff to give me a thumbs up that the medical exemption was granted.
You know, it's actually embarrassing that you have to ask me that question in front of hundreds of people here. That's discrimination against HIPAA. It is. I can't ask you if you're gay. I can't ask you if you have herpes. You can't ask me about my medical exemption. I can't ask you if you're pregnant. You can't ask me that question.
Would you like your minute now?
I would love my minute, yes. Thank you. I'm a Fairfax County public school teacher, and I'm going to give a message of encouragement to parents and teachers and students who are too afraid to come and speak forward. Parents, the longer that you wait and you don't hold your child's schools accountable gives these guys more time to dictate what's best for your child's physical, mental, and emotional health. Don't be afraid to speak out for your kids because they are voiceless and they rely on you. You should be afraid of them rooting for socialism by the time they get to middle school. Teachers, it may seem that our careers have come to a dead end, but I'm here to remind you we don't work for the school board. We work to mold the next generation of well-rounded American patriots. So don't give up because it is up to us. Students, you are on the front lines of these indoctrination camps. Challenge the staff when you're presented with a ludicrous statement, and do not allow anybody to tell you that you cannot accomplish anything because of your skin color or to hate yourself because of your skin color. Students, it is up to you to be the next generation of victims or victors. And finally, to the board, this isn't over, and your policies are just as...
Nick Gossard, followed by Ryan.
They, as you heard, Laurie, they cut her off there, but
Yeah, they turned her mic off, it sounds like.
they turned her mic off. She went her 60 seconds. What's your overview of all of this that's going on?
Well, there's a lot I could say to that question. I think on the topic of critical race theory, that teacher is really correct about parental involvement. And when, I work for Bryant Songi Snell, and I'm the director of the Center for Education Opportunity at America First, and we are focused on policies that put American people first. And so when I look at critical race theory as a former educator myself and researcher, I think it's really interesting, but I think nobody's really talking about what else we can legitimately do. So one of the papers that I've written is about how curriculum is adopted in the United States in our public schools. And that is a place where parents and teachers and people passionate on these subjects should be involved. And what happens, as you just saw in Mississippi, social studies new curriculum is put out for public comment, and oftentimes there are no comments to these types of public writings, and then it goes to the district, and the district then adopts textbooks and lesson plans and materials that go with those standards. And so the textbook companies start creating textbooks that match these standards that have been met in each state. And so I've done a lot of writing and working with states across the United States right now on this topic about getting involved at the school board level and running for school board. Well, I have a few things I've written about. Where's my list of all of them? A parent toolkit on how to combat critical race theory in schools, steps that school board members can take, sample questions you should ask, keywords. I was going to give you this document before I leave today about how to identify critical race theory in curriculum. But if I just think back to my time in teaching in Arizona and New Mexico and in Mississippi, I served on what was called a curriculum committee. And we often had one parent who would serve on our committee with us, and we would select a curriculum that met our standards, and it would go to the board and get automatically approved. And I think it's possible that's really happening, and all of a sudden now parents are really standing up and trying to voice concern, but there's all these policies in place that we've followed all along that have just been put into place.
Let me ask you this. And I know the article was banning around a lot of different places. I think Yale Politics also had a good write-up on that one. You've seen that, and you've seen the filing with the SOS. And I talked to the Department of Education, and just paraphrasing what they said, it's just normal stuff, nothing to be worried about. Everybody's getting their panties in a wad for something that they shouldn't be worried. That didn't say that, but I'm paraphrasing. Do you agree with that, or was this filing something a little unusual, or should we be worried about what the actions were, what they were trying to do?
I think that's hard to tell because I don't typically follow exactly the dates that the Department of Ed typically puts things out, but to distribute it for public comment on December 16th, the day before the Christmas break, and then having the due date for requests for a hearing being today doesn't give parents and families and others that are...
Exactly what do they want to do?
What does who want to do?
What was the filing for? What was the curriculum that wanted to be that they were asking to be allowed, or that they were going to put?
Yeah, it was the social studies curriculum, and what you think when I say the word curriculum, it's important to know that curriculum is sort of a set of logistic stages on a given topic. So there's a math standards that are issued in the state. There's social studies standards for kindergarten. There's a set of standards for first grade. It develops on those ones from kindergarten. Second grade develops on the ones from first. Goes in a progressive order all the way up till 12th grade. And so what they were trying to do with this, I believe, is update it, which is normal. I read the list of people who participated in it. I assume there's some parents in there, but I couldn't identify who was parents and who were people from the school districts that participated. So the process itself is standard, but putting it out in a time like today where critical race theory is so divisive, I think there could have been a little more transparency of possibly opening it up for a longer period of time to allow for real feedback.
Well, here's the good news on that one. 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even 2 or 3 years ago, nobody would be concerned about that. At least they've raised some concern about it, and I think that's what's needed going forward as far as education in our schools are concerned. Go ahead.
I was just going to add one thing I think is so interesting about the history of critical race theory is that it started obviously in universities, as you know, and law schools, and it was called critical theory then. But in 2019, the New York Times published something called the 1619 Project. I don't know if you've talked about that previously on your show, but that was an article written by a journalist that actually is in our schools, and it's very identifiable, but it identifies 1619 as the start date of America, the date that slaves actually entered the first arrival on American soil. But written by a journalist, it's been used in 4,500 schools nationwide. When I clicked on it today to prepare for talking to you, I actually found that they have now published a curriculum to go with it, and they have resources for teachers, lesson plans, textbooks, resources for after-school education, a podcast, flashcard terms. So it's remarkable to me how quickly that got in, and that's what's raised the awareness around critical race theory.
Well, and if we don't think that it's well coordinated, we're being too naive. It is well coordinated, and there is an objective behind this, and that is to continue for the next generation to mistrust each other. And we got more things to talk about. As far as education, there are a lot of good things going on as far as education in our state. We'll share some of those with Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith coming up in a moment or two. And also want to ask you, are you or the group helping fashion maybe some of the laws that will be presented as far as CRT in this legislative session? All of that coming up next. And welcome back to the Trustmark Studios in part of 2022. If you're planning on doing some remodeling, new vehicle, whatever it happens to be, maybe the youngster is at 16 years of age now, and you know what goes on there. You got to have a new vehicle or a vehicle. So go to the good people at Trustmark. If you built equity in your home, Trustmark can make a lot of your dreams come true. In the house, it's Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith, and again, we're talking CRT and education, but let's focus for a minute or two, Laurie, on some of the good news, because we have made remarkable strides I'm going to throw a little politics in here. Under the Republican leadership that was wrested away from the Democrats after 140 years, we've seen some remarkable progress as far as education is concerned.
Yes, and Mississippi continues to, we passed so many great policies that have really helped students over the years and are really, as I work at the national level now, really see Mississippi as a leader in how we implemented those policies on reading and early literacy and early childhood education and some of the other things the legislature did even in the last 8 to 10 years. So it's been very exciting to be part of that. But on the national level, I will say that we are so focused on this critical race theory issue. There's also a lot of other things with learning loss that occurred as a result of COVID-19. And I think as much passion as we feel about this subject, I think we should be using it for math and reading and what is our school district doing to help catch kids up. And teachers and principals have so much on them right now. There's just a lot of pressure in the public schools right now.
Yesterday I mentioned this, and I said a lot of times we of the baby boomer era and even younger, sometimes we cling to what we think is good. And I use the example of myself when I heard that cursive is no longer being taught. And I thought, you that's crazy. You've got to teach cursive. And then, and I don't want to bore the audience with repetitiveness from this week, but when one of the members of the family got the new Oculus video headgear VR system, and you start looking, and now the kids are playing with this thing, and there's some programs on there that blow me away as far as teaching. They are just incredible. The 4-year-old is just a whiz already in just several days. And I asked the question, regardless of our age or how we are tied to the curriculum that we teach in schools today, what percentage, and I ask for you to, as everybody else, just give me an honest answer, what percentage of curriculum in today to face the world going forward should we absolutely scrap and start over?
That's a difficult question, but I do think technology should be replacing a lot of those older standards that we've had in there. So I don't really have a percentage, I guess. I think we ought to take a whole new look at all of American public school systems. I think COVID-19 has drawn so much attention to the ability for parents to have choice and how school closings affected parents and the workforce and working women particularly. So there's a lot we could do there. One thing that came to mind when you were talking, though, is this idea that we put computers in the hands of all children during COVID-19 across the United States. Laptops were given out in Mississippi, numerous states. That was step one. And what we didn't do well that I'm writing about right now for America First is also we didn't do well in keeping our kids as safe as we could. So you talk about your own child doing some of that work. Our computers are only required to have something called a content filter, which blocks them from going to any inappropriate websites. The research shows that the average 3rd or 4th grader can get around a content filter in about 5 minutes and can access all kinds of websites. So more to come on that, but I think that's something we're really looking at is we put these great tools, and technology is a great thing to add to curriculum, but it's a big issue for schools right now and keeping those kids safe. And the other big topic is COVID-19 health management in our schools right now. How, on top of everything else we've just talked about, critical race theory, adopting curriculum, teaching our children, now our teachers and principals and superintendents are supposed to be experts on taking temperatures and managing their health records, and who do we send home and what do we do? There's a whole nother layer there. And so I'm doing some more writing about that at the national level, about ways we can help districts that, with agencies that have expertise in this, so that we're not just piling on more and more for these teachers and superintendents.
Why haven't we ever had, or is this legal to do this? Why haven't we ever had an initiative for school choice?
In Mississippi, we have had school choice.
I'm talking about a referendum on the initiative basis.
I don't know the reason why we have not, but I'm hoping that Mississippi and many other states will expand. That's one of the big priorities of the America First Policy Institute of my center, is to help expand. I'm working in 5 states this year where we hope to expand those policies. I think you saw in Virginia what happened when we talk about parents having choice, and I really think there's room for expansion. And Mississippi's done very well with our charter schools in Mississippi and maintaining the high bar that bill set, and has very good language in there about keeping high quality for charters. We did a great job in Mississippi and is used as a national role model on the special needs student scholarships for school choice. But I think COVID-19 has opened the door of saying, why don't we expand everything even more? And when a parent didn't get what they needed at a local school, could they go elsewhere and take those dollars that are their dollars at the state level? I want one data point that's interesting. You know, you hear a lot about the federal rules won't allow us to do something like standards. The feds require us to have these standards, and, you know, you hear that term a lot. I learned that in Mississippi, less than 7% of the funding for education comes from the feds. But I feel and see and know that they dictate so much of what we do in education. So I just think it's interesting. We would never give back our 7%, but we certainly have 93% of our own funds that are helping.
Well, don't you also think that a lot of times, because the people who are involved in moving education one way or the other are people like the Parents Campaign, which is a very left-leaning organization which concerns themselves with the minutia of the administration and and the dollars. They're looking at the dollars itself. I see very few things that the Parents Campaign has actually done to move education ahead, other than just constantly asking for more money, not to justify how and where it's been spent. For the most part, it's just that we want to keep this pipeline to all of these funds in the billions of dollars going, which helps people who have contracts. But as far as kids in school, it hasn't helped them at all. And one of the reasons I mentioned this about the initiative is we haven't had a lot of groups like Governor Bryant's group, which is relatively new, as you well know, but others who've been here for a while. We don't have a lot of conservative groups who to start that so-called grassroots movement, to ask for it, to put it together, to use the weight that they have to say, okay, guys, you want initiatives for marijuana? Hell, let's have one for school choice. Let's put it out there. Let's put it in the Constitution. Well, we could before, not now, but let's go on and do a school choice and give every parent, black and white, the opportunity to move their kids to a better school if theirs is failing. Boom.
I think you make it sound really easy, and we should start on that immediately. But
no, I know it's not easy. It would be easy to start it. It's probably going to be very difficult to finish it.
Well, and that's what I'm learning in other states. There are very well-established conservative think tanks, research institutes, foundations that are helping at the grassroots level to move this along. And I think Mississippi could use some support in that area. And America First is set up to do just that, with the Center for 1776. Governor Bryant and Lou Holtz also chair that center at America First. And they are very focused on providing talking points on critical race theory, school board member resource guides, patriotic study guides, that kind of thing.
I do want to ask you this in our final segment here. Has America First been meeting with any of the legislators to help fashion any of the information as far as CRT?
I believe so. I believe so in Mississippi and many other states as well.
Always good seeing you. Don't be a stranger during the session.